their questions until the end of the presentation when the recording is stopped. So just make sure you keep that to the very end. If you want to ask any of our speakers any questions, you'll have the chance to either unmute your mics then, or you can ask the questions in the chat and we'll relay them to the speakers. Also, because this is going to be recorded, we're asking that everyone is not going to be taking any pictures or screenshots of their screens from their end, just to respect everybody's privacy. So with that, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. We're first going to be hearing from our Phase 1 vet student, Miheen Khan. So whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and start us off.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, cool. So hi, my name is Maheen. I'm in my phase 1 of the DVM program at OVC. Just a little bit about me, my kind of background. I did 4 years of animal bio at Guelph, then applied in the last application cycle. So I guess a couple of things that I thought I just wanted to mention. One of the big things that I think I would have known a little bit more about is just kind of the transition from undergrad to being in OVC, or just kind of like in any type of post-grad education. So there's a big difference in course content. And just aside from like actual things that you're learning, there's also a significantly more amount of time of lectures. So there are a lot of days that we like start at 8:30 and you go till 5:30. So it's like 4 hours of lecture in the morning, 4 hours in the afternoon. It can get pretty tiring and it's a lot to take in. So that's something that is definitely different from undergrad, where you kind of usually have like an hour lecture and then a couple hours and then another hour lecture or whatever. That's probably the biggest difference. Another difference that I think is a little important to know is that every day and every week is different. So you don't really have that like structure that you would get when you're in your undergrad, kind of where like Monday, Wednesday is genetics and Tuesday, Thursday is anatomy. In OVC, it's every day and every week is different. So you could have anatomy on Monday and Tuesday 1 week, and then no anatomy the next week, and histology on Monday and Tuesday. So it's just like a big kind of shift and difference. So it's something that takes a little getting used to, especially since I was kind of coming out from undergrad where I had the same courses like throughout the entire semester, and like everything was always the same. And then a thing that I kind of wanted to mention is kind of study tips. Truthfully, I think I finally figured out how to study now after being in vet school. In undergrad, I think I was kind of under the mindset that like, if I just memorize everything and hope for the best, like maybe I'll do okay. But that's kind of something that I realized, especially with the level of content that you're learning, it's just not possible. And so you kind of have to prioritize the main concepts and really figure out on how to understand those, and then kind of apply that to like the broader concepts. A good thing is that a lot of the courses overlap. And so that makes it really helpful for kind of understanding the overall picture. Like, for example, in physiology, we're doing like the renal, so kidneys and stuff. And then in histology, we just did the renal system. So they kind of overlap together, and it really helps to like understand, which I think is helpful. And that really helps making like helps when studying. Another thing that I think is important is like really prioritizing lecture time. So going to lecture and like actually listening. I think I used to kind of just passively listen and then go back, but realistically, you just don't have that kind of time. So I think if somebody had told me that in my undergrad, I would have worked on that a little bit more. So it's something I recommend. And then kind of, you don't always have the time to like go back and make really nice notes or make your whatever. So I really recommend like cue cards or like Quizlets and stuff. Those are really helpful. And I don't think I use that enough in undergrad. So I would recommend doing that now and kind of getting used to it that way. Once you kind of get to OVC or vet school or anything, you kind of have that under your belt, and which really helps with studying.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So we're going to go over to our next speaker, our Phase 2 student, Emily Chiravati. So whenever you're ready, you can go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Can you see me at all?
Yes,
can you
I
see
can.
me now? Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name's Emily. So I'm currently in my Phase 2 at OVC. I kind of had a nonlinear path to get started. So a little bit about myself, just as Maheen did. I started my undergrad, I believe, in 2017, and I went until 2019. So I applied, or I guess it would be 2020, sorry. So I applied in the fall of 2020 for that cycle. Um, I started in international development actually at Guelph, and then I internally transferred into animal bio, and I did 4 years of animal bio. I didn't have the grades actually from high school, so I kind of worked around that and did what I could to get to where I am today. And then I didn't really start my animal experience until 2019, so it's never really too late to get started with experience. You got to do what works for you and whatever makes you happy and whatever feels right for you. So, sorry, my cat will probably be pretty vocal. He's jealous when I talk to other people. So I kind of wanted to just go through a day-to-day life for me as a vet student in phase 2. Like Maheen said, there's like a huge transition going from even your undergrad to phase 1, and then from phase 1 to phase 2, I found was even more of a bigger gap or a jump per se. Prioritizing studying is something that I really want to like hit home for everyone. I cannot stress this enough. If you are the kind of studier who likes to write things out and be really methodical and like write and rewrite things out, I am that person. That will no longer be possible, especially in phase 2. Quizlet is now my best friend. That and making charts of like drugs and different systems, whatnot. That works best for me now. We have exams in phase 2 every Monday and sometimes every other Wednesday. So you kind of have maybe 5 days in between every exam to study, and that's for 7 courses all at once. So working on those study habits would be good to kind of start now, just as Maheen said. So I was going to show you my schedule, like a day in the life. I want to preface this before I show you this, that your schedule does not have to look like this in any way, shape, or form. I personally like to thrive, or I thrive off chaos. I find it keeps me more organized in a very weird way. But the red is classes and the greens are tests in this schedule. So this is kind of what my schedule looks like. Monday to Friday for me in phase 2. iCal has kind of been a lifesaver for me. So I put everything for class in red and then anything for like a due date or an exam in green. So I kind of know what to prioritize and when to be where. And then I have blue for my extracurriculars. So I personally chose to be a part of multiple extracurriculars. Definitely not a requirement by any means. Sorry, this is Cheddar. But I find that it gives me a forced break from school, and it's also doing something that I truly enjoy. Sometimes in your classes, things can get a little bit boring for you. Say you love dairy, like myself, but you learn a lot of small animal stuff. Being a part of the Food Animal Club and the Theriogenology Club for large animals is something that makes me happy. So that's why I added those things in there. So yeah, again, this is kind of like what my schedule looks like, but by no means does yours have to look this way. But just know that you will be quite busy. So prioritizing your time is super important. Other than that, I think the only other thing I wanted to talk about was like me time. So like I said, we have exams like every Monday, sometimes every other Wednesday, depends on the week and the course, but finding time for yourself is challenging. So in first year, I definitely learned pretty quickly that doing well in the way that I did in undergrad is no longer possible. It might be for some people for sure, depending on how you learn, how you study, how you memorize, whatnot. But you kind of have to learn to take things with a grain of salt. The new 90 for you might be a 70, it might be an 80, it might be a 60, and that's okay. Do things for yourself. Like I love live music, so I go to concerts a lot. I spend time with my boyfriend looking at new music. I like to go thrifting. So I do that sometimes when I'm feeling overwhelmed. And honestly, you might feel guilty at first, but it helps so much. And it's really made an improvement in my grades and my ability to study. So yeah, doing things for yourself is super duper important, even if you have a schedule that looks as chaotic and crazy as mine. But like I said, I chose that. So I hope I don't scare you in any way. But yeah, so I guess that's kind of all I have um, regarding things that work for me in phase two and how phase two is. I'm just reading here that I mentioned high school schedule. So like Maheen said, we have school from like 8:30 to 5:30 every day. And we get the same lunch break, all 4 phases. I guess clinical year is a bit different, but 12:30 to 1:30, we all have class together. So that's when you can like meet friends or have some events running or whatnot. But yeah, it's really fun. It might be really busy and a lot of work, but it's awesome. So good luck to everybody. And I hope that my tips help, and feel free to reach out to any of us with any questions, even at the end. Happy to answer.
That was great. Thank you so much, Emily. I'm glad we got to see Cheddar make a guest appearance. We'll be switching over to our phase 3 speaker now, Stephanie Sharman, whenever you're ready.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So I'm Steph. I'm in phase 3 this year. I guess a little background on me. I did my undergrad in Ann Bio, like I'm sure a lot of people going to vet school do. I applied, didn't get in my first time, and so I went back for an extra semester in a non-degree program just to try and get my grades up. Clearly it worked because I got in the next time around. So for those, if you don't get on the first try, there's still hope. So I'm in phase 3 now. The biggest content differences, I guess, would be that we're starting to transition into more on how to fix pathologies. So like phase 1 focused on kind of what was normal, phase 2 was what could go wrong, and now in phase 3 we're starting to think about how to treat like disease processes. So I'm going to touch on some labs that I've had so far this year. We get to do a lot of hands-on stuff, which is nice. So one of them was an equine lameness lab where we brushed up on our anatomy, and then we had some handlers jog the horses around, and we tried to like pinpoint where the lameness was, and then like what next steps we would do to perform for diagnostics. We also had an internal med lab where we were able to use cadavers and practice like landmarks to perform like cystocentesis, abdominocentesis, thoracocentesis, and all those things sounded super intimidating at first, but actually being able to go to lab and putting the theory into like clinical skills was nice. The most exciting thing about phase 3 for me personally so far has been doing our first surgeries. So we chose our surgery groups, which are groups of 3, and over the year we get to do 5 surgeries, and we rotate between being a primary surgeon, a secondary surgeon, and anesthesiologist. So my group had our first surgery on the 25th of October, and we performed a cat spay. It was really nice to be able to see the anatomy of a live, healthy patient and work on like live tissue, since it definitely feels a lot different than working on our DAISY practice models from phase 1 and 2. In phase 3, we also start to choose our streams as we start to think about the transition into our clinical year. So we've already secured our 8-week externships, which we'll do in the summer between phase 3 and 4. So that's at a mixed animal practice of our choice that we have to get approved. And the idea is that we spend half our time working with small animals and half our time with large animals so that we get a well-rounded experience. I'm doing mine in High River, Alberta, but I know some of my classmates are doing like in Yukon, out east, pretty much anywhere. Like the experience is what you want to make it. Believe it or not, there is quite a life outside of studying at vet school. So there's, I think, 28 clubs at OVC, and it varies from like nutrition, business club, surgery club, literally anything that you can think of. So the school year is packed full of lunch talks that the clubs put on, and they arrange speakers from like various parts of vet med, and they come to OVC or talk online about like different things that aren't heavily emphasized in the curriculum. And you get to hear a lot about topics that like you're interested in. Like you don't have to go, but I just sign up for all the clubs and just get all the emails and pick and choose which ones I want to go to. And oftentimes there's pizza and prizes, so that's a huge bonus. As a hockey player my whole life, I feel obligated to touch on hockey because it's a pretty big deal at OVC. I was really excited for this part about school. Each phase puts together a women's team and a co-ed team, and you get to design a specific like class logo for your jerseys. Usually you make like your animal into something that looks angry, like I don't know, we're turtles, so it was hard to make it look intimidating, but I think we did an all right job. Anybody can join. You don't have to have hockey experience. It makes it even more fun. I know our women's team, I think only like 3 people had played hockey before, but we've gotten really good since phase 1, so it's nice. So we sign up through the intramurals at like main campus, and we play like other teams, but also our OVC teams through the year. And then there's this thing called Challenge Cup, which is specific for OVC. With COVID, we haven't had the chance to like get a real Challenge Cup experience, but it's in full force this year, so I'm really excited for that. We get sponsors and have merchandise, and hopefully we're gonna have food and stuff sold at the games, and we get to invite our friends and family and our classmates to come out and watch us play the other OVC teams. What else did I put? Balancing school life and social life. Yeah, so I think work-life balance has been a huge thing for me over the years in vet school. You know, in phase 1, it was really easy for me to try and keep up my undergrad lifestyle, and I was super grade concerned, but as well as what Maheen and Emily said, I was a super, like I had color-coded notes in undergrad and had to memorize every single detail. And I learned very quickly in phase 1 that that was not going to be possible anymore. I've actually completely switched my study habits. Actually, like me and my friend, we just get together and we go through the lecture slides and we just talk to each other about it. And that seems to have stuck more. And I never thought I would be somebody that studied like that. So it's been interesting to see how my study habits have developed over the years. With how much content there is, it's really easy to eat, sleep, and breathe vet school. And while sometimes that's necessary during the busier midterm seasons, having a life outside school is super important, or it can be super isolating. For me personally, I'm a homebody, so I try and make as much time as possible to hang out with my family. And sometimes where I might miss out on a family event to study, I think, oh, well, maybe I can just study a little bit later, or maybe I have to extend my day a little bit so that I don't miss out on something that I think would be good for me mentally. And most of the time it works out okay. And I'm glad that I didn't miss out on that because I thought school took too much priority. Yeah, I think that's all I have. I guess I didn't really give them any tips, but if anybody has any questions, you guys can reach out to any of us, just like Emily said. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Stephanie. And we're going to move on to our last vet student speaker. Our phase 4 is Brenna Hurley. Whenever you're ready, you can take it away.
Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me okay? All right, so yeah, I'm Brenna. I guess a little bit of background on me, like everyone else has done. I guess I'm the different one of the group. I didn't actually do animal bio. I did go to Guelph, but I did my undergrad in biomed, which I really enjoyed. I liked a lot more of the physiology and stuff as opposed to more of the animal biology side of it at the time. So that's what I did. Like Steph, I applied once my 3rd year and didn't make it. So I graduated in 2019 and then went into to start OVC on my second application round that year. So yeah, now I'm in my my 4th year, which is a little scary, but it's a lot of fun. So I think what I'll talk to you guys about mostly is just what phase 4 is all about. When I, was applying to OVC or even in like the first year to OVC, I was like, I don't know what happens in 4th year. And it can be a little confusing. So basically 4th year is your clinical year of school. So that means you you don't have any classes at all. It's not like the schedules everyone else have talked about, which, by the way, having gone through all the phases before, I can echo everything everyone else has said so far. Some great advice, and yeah, that's excellent. So in phase 4, all that kind of changes a little bit. You don't really have your summer off anymore. So your summer between 3rd and 4th year, at least half of it has to be spent doing what's called your externship. So that's what Stephanie touched on a little bit. So that's an 8-week mixed animal rotation, basically, at a clinic that's external to OVC. And like Stephanie said, you can do it literally anywhere. You do start organizing that after phase 2, actually, before you even start phase 3. And they'll have, you'll hear all about how to do this and stuff. So no need to worry about that in phases 1 and 2. But I did mine in Ireland this past summer, which was a lot of fun and very different. I have classmates that did in Australia, California, the Yukon, as Steph said, a lot that went out west, Alberta and BC, and also a number of classmates that stayed right around Guelph and did at the common place around here. Some of you might have heard about, like Heartland and Paris Vet Clinic and places like that. So there's all the options. But yeah, that's how you kind of start phase 4, is doing that externship if you choose to do it in the first half of your summer. The rest of the year is all clinical rotations. And now I said you don't have any more classes. Some of these rotations, depending on what you do, might have a classroom base to it, as in, for example, there's a really classroom based one is wildlife. There's a wildlife rotation that is more on disease management and stuff. So that's a little bit more of learning as opposed to just doing wildlife clinical medicine. And then there's a lot of other rotations. That's an elective that I just talked about that are really just, most of them I would say are really just you being in the clinic. And it's really a good way to kind of transition between being a student and being a real life adult with a working job. That's basically what it feels like. So it's a lot of fun. It's very different. But how you start off is you pick, so talk about streaming I have on the slide here, and what Stephanie was kind of mentioning. Streaming is picking what you want to do most of your rotations in terms of types of animals. So OVC has 4 streams, and not all universities do this. By the way, this is something that I think probably less than half the universities in North America do. But a lot of people obviously at OVC really enjoy this because you can focus on what you like. But you can either stream small animal, large animal, equine practice, or what's called a rural community practice. And that is essentially mixed animal. So it's a little bit of everything. And then depending on what you stream, you're assigned specific what's called core rotations at OVC. So those are rotations that you don't have a choice in. They include primary healthcare for everyone. So that's basically like general practice medicine that's done at the Smith Lane Animal Hospital on campus. And then you have things like surgery, so whether that's small animal or large animal or both, or equine surgery. You have internal medicine, anesthesia, radiology, pathology. Those are all things that are core rotations. And then for your electives, you get a certain number of weeks that you get to choose what you want to do. And OVC has a number of electives that they offer that aren't core rotations. Those are things like oncology, the wildlife one I was talking about. There's super random ones, like there's one I think that's relatively new that's on bee health, which is really cool. So there's interesting ones like that. As electives, you can also take any of those core rotations for additional weeks. So if you really liked your time in internal medicine, want to do another week, for example, you can add that. Or say you're streaming small animal, but you really want to just maybe try a week of large animal med or something. You can do 1 week of that. So it's kind of interesting because you really get to design your schedule how you would like to design it. For me, as someone interested in kind of wildlife, sea medicine, I spent 4 weeks in Belize this year doing wildlife there, and 4 weeks at the Vancouver Aquarium in the summer, which was a lot of fun. So you can really tailor it to kind of what you're interested in. And how many weeks you have to do that, to pick your electives, will depend on your stream. And I'm not going to give you specific numbers for every stream, because you'll learn that in third year when you get to decide. So it's way far down the line to think about. But basically, like for myself and I stream small animal, I have 13 weeks off to add in there. So that's a lot of time to kind of pick and choose what you want to add in. And for your starting with your externship in the summer, you have either 2 months, you have to, sorry, I said it was 8 weeks, so 2 months. Generally, you normally do it either May, June, or July, August. So there's nothing stopping you from doing it June, July, if you wanted to do that. It does have to be 8 consecutive weeks, so those are your only 3 options. So a lot of people will do it May, June, and that's kind of the start of the clinical year. But your other option is to do it July, August, for example. That's when I did mine. And then you can actually start rotations in May instead of just starting with your externship. But you don't have to. You can take those remaining 8 weeks of summer off if you're really hoping to work in the summer, or to just have your summer off and do nothing. But that basically means that the only break you get during the school year, if you take the remaining 8 weeks off during the summer, is 2 weeks at Christmas break. There's no reading week or anything like that in fourth year. Which is a little sad. But the nice thing is that if you do add even just like a couple weeks in the summer, like maybe 2 weeks, that gives you 2 additional weeks off during the year. So that's generally what a lot of people do, but 100% not necessary. So yeah, totally up to you. That's what fourth year, sorry, is all about what you like and how you want to schedule your year, which is what makes it a lot of fun, I think, personally. So yeah, the only other thing to consider when you're in fourth year, of course, is writing what's called the NAVLE, so the North American Veterinary Licensing Exam, which sounds a little scary, and it kind of feels that way right now. But basically, that's an exam most people write in about November, December of your first year's or fourth year, sorry, is the writing period. There's a second writing period in April as well. It's only 2 weeks long. But most people write it. You don't have to, but a lot of people do in the fall. And so that's something you keep in mind in terms of scheduling rotations and what you like to do. You do have to study a lot for that. The nice thing OBC does is give you 1 week during the fall semester that is called a study week. And it's literally a week of your rotations. It's actual week you're scheduled for that is just a week off just to study. So that's really helpful. In terms of work-life balance with rotations, honestly, in a way, it's almost easier than the rest of the 3 phases because you're kind of just working. Then it's like you're off work, and I mean, you have NAVLE studying to do in the fall. But aside from that, you can almost go out and do other things. The downside is some of these rotations are very long hours, and so it can be really hard to balance life outside of it. Like some rotations, you'd be in the hospital for until like late in the evening, normally starting early in the morning, and a lot of them too will have evening, overnight, and weekend on call shifts as well. That being said, as long as you know, that's the thing. There's still a lot of ways you can make fourth year fun. I'm still part of my year's hockey team, which, by the way, I had never played hockey. I barely knew how to skate when I started. So you can definitely join if you've never played hockey before. But that was something, I can't make every single game because sometimes I might be away for an external rotation, or sometimes I just have to work late at the hospital. I'm on call or something like that. But the games I can make are a lot of fun, and it's a really great way to, keep up with your classmates and stuff. You also can still be a part of clubs and whatnot. A lot of times when you get to fourth year, you help with some of the labs that the clubs offer. You can help with mentoring other students that are in lower phases, things like that. So there's definitely, and you can occasionally sneak away for some of those lunch talks still. So there's still a lot of work or a lot of life balance there that you can include. And again, when you are off and not on call and not studying for NAVLE, then it's almost like free time. You don't have to worry about your Monday tests that you have every single day or every single Monday in phase 2. So, some rotations will be a little bit of work, some presentations here and there after hours, but Honestly, on a personal level, I feel like there's almost a little bit extra time when you're not in the clinic to enjoy life a bit. So yeah, and again, yeah, super open to any questions, as anyone else has already said.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brenna. So that covers our vet student speakers for tonight. And now we're going to move on to our recent grad practicing veterinarians, starting with our bovine vet, Nicole Burkar. My apologies if I mispronounced that, but whenever you're ready, you can go ahead.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I am a bovine vet, but we also do a lot of equine work and small ruminant work where I am right now. I did my undergrad at McGill in basically animal science, and then I went to vet school from 2018 to 2022, so I just graduated in May. I did stream food animal and always had a strong interest in dairy medicine. But you know, you never know where life takes you and takes you in different directions. And now I'm doing less dairy than I originally thought I would, and more of other stuff. So I think it's really good to keep an open mind through vet school. And what you end up doing after school, even a lot of the fellow food animal students in my class ended up going mixed to get a broad perspective about medicine in general and doing small and large animal before perhaps sticking with large animal in the future, just so they have more of a basis to go off of. So yeah, I started pre-COVID and then kind of had COVID in the middle of things. And that does kind of affect the vet school experience. Hopefully now things are a little bit more normal, because pre-COVID and hopefully currently, I'm going to be honest, I didn't love vet school. Vet school is not awesome. It's a means to an end. But what's great about vet school or being in vet school is a lot of the extra stuff that we have available in terms of the clubs, different labs, different events, different things that we can get to do. I had the opportunity of going to East Africa with Vets Without Borders and working with smallholder dairy producers and poultry producers there. And there's also opportunities to travel with Global Vets, which is more clinical medicine than Vets Without Borders. So things to think about, and lots of shadowing opportunities, whether that's with the school or whether that's without the school, contacting clinics, getting that hands-on experience is, I feel, essential to being best prepared for practice after school. School is great. You learn a lot of basics and stuff like that, but there's a lot of practical things that you learn on the job and in the field that are very important. So I think those things were very important pre-COVID. And in terms of building connections in vet school, these are going to be your future colleagues. If you're making friends with people and learning from people that you will continue to be friends with and learn from in the future, because we're all a team in the end. In different areas, there might be competition between practices and things like that, but we're all a team and we all work together and help each other get to where we need to be. I think for me, an interest in large animal medicine, working on farms and understanding the day-to-day challenges that producers go through, whether it's dairy, whether it's beef, whether it's equine, is really important to get a good approach to medicine. Because what we'll learn and what you will learn when you get into vet school and after vet school is that it's not just about the medicine. The human aspect is huge, 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 huge. You can't just make recommendations and this person is going through a mental health crisis and they're not going to listen to those recommendations. So working on these, working in the field with people and getting that experience with communication skills and also understanding what the challenges are to their day-to-day life is very important, I would say, in becoming a vet, because we're more than just there for the animals. We're there for the people too. And that maybe gets missed sometimes, but it's a big part of our job. So, and vet school is good with AVM and stuff like that for helping us with that. But I don't think AVM replaces real world skills in terms of working. I mean, I worked a lot during school. I don't think everyone else can work quite as much as I did. And social life kind of went down a little bit because of that. And we've been talking about work-life balance a lot. And you can't do everything. You can't have everything. You have to prioritize certain things. And for me, I had friends, of course, and did different things and hung out with them and stuff like that. But work was a big thing, and I don't regret that at all. A, for student debt, which is, a big deal, and B, because I got that experience on farms that is helping me now, even with foals. Foals are a tricky thing. They're little funny buggers, and I hadn't touched a foal before I started working in a broodmare barn in school. And 4 years of working with foals, and now I'm an equine vet as well as a bovine vet, and we do a lot of repro in our clinic. So that working and hands-on with foals is coming handy. And I would not have had that in vet school. That was all outside of school. So vet school is great, vet school is important, but all the stuff you do outside of school is also equally, if not more important than the stuff you do in school. And I feel like the stuff you do outside of school helps solidify the learning. I'm kind of a hands-on learner. Everyone's got a different learning style. But if I do something, I will remember it a heck of a lot better than if someone lectures me about something. So I think doing those extra stuff, the extracurricular activities, working, shadowing is going to be really, really important throughout everyone's vet school careers. And hopefully after COVID, we have that back, because during COVID, I think maybe I have another, during COVID, there's definitely a lot more challenges in school with online learning and less labs and all that stuff. And I can't say exactly how the experience is now. Your phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3 students are going to know that a little bit more. Definitely new challenges, learning from home, doing lectures from bed, falling asleep. But you have more flexibility. And maybe that's good, maybe that's not good. Less people take you on as a student for shadowing, but now I think that's becoming less so. And I think you have more flexibility to kind of manage your time better when lectures are recorded, and you can listen to people at 2 times speed, which ends up being quite helpful, I find, for some professors that you just can't listen to because they're just talking so slowly. So there's definitely advantages of post-COVID, and I hope that maybe there's a good balance now between having those online recorded lectures that you can go back to and you can do at your own time, at your own pace, and having all those opportunities of extracurriculars and extra stuff outside of school that didn't happen during COVID. And now, in terms of after school, because that's always the goal, right? We're going into vet school, we want to be a vet. What do we do? It's a big, big deal to get into vet school. It's a big deal to get through vet school, but then you kind of go like, okay, now what? So a lot of people asked me, and I think it's a good idea of what to ask, of what makes up a dream job for you. And for me, it was always hard to answer that question. I wanted to do large animal. I did not have an interest in small animal. That's just me. But at the end of the day, I couldn't necessarily come up with a dream job because I think it always came down to the people that you worked with and whether you got along with them, whether you had a good team dynamic. So something to think about is, what is a dream job for you? Is it really, really important that you do only cats? Is it really, really important to you that you do beef medicine? Or is it really, really important to you that you're in a good geographic location that works for you personally in your personal life? Those are sort of some things to start thinking about. But definitely keep your options open, like I was talking about. I thought I was going to be a dairy vet, and now 30% of my time is dairy, 50% of my time is equine, and then, the other bit is split between beef and sheep and goats. And I'm not disappointed about that. I think that gives me a wide range of things, and it opens up doors in my career than just starting dairy medicine and then being stuck, quote unquote, with dairy medicine. Right now, there's a shortage of vets, which is a good and a bad thing. If you're looking for jobs, there's lots of jobs available. You don't need to stress out too much. You'll find a job. It's not a big deal. Some of my classmates signed jobs in August of 3rd year or going into 4th year. And some of my classmates signed jobs in May before they graduated. Not a big deal. It feels like a big deal. People are going to ask you. It's going to be stressful. You will find a job. At the end of the day too, though, because of the vet shortage, there are more demands on people and more pressure on people and even support staff. So that's something to think about too, that there is a little bit of stress in the profession right now about just being overworked and trying to maintain that work-life balance. Because I think that work-life balance is becoming more and more and more important in veterinarians compared to what they used to be of like, we're going to work 7 days a week, we're always on call, things like that. And now people are pushing more for 4-day work weeks and things like that. And that's great. That is great. In terms of what to look for when you're looking for a job. And this is, for undergrad students, isn't that something you need to think about right away, but just in the future. The feedback that I've gotten in terms of what I was looking for in a job and take-home messages that I've had being in practice for only about 6 months now is mentorship, mentorship, mentorship. Mentorship is key. Vet school prepares you for certain things. If you do extra stuff outside of vet school, like I talked about, you're even more prepared. But you're not ever really going to be prepared for what you're going to face in practice. You need to continue to learn and continue to have people there to support you. Sorry, emergency alert. There's always challenges. I was on call last weekend. I had 2 down horses and they both died. One I euthanized and one died on their own. That's not great. That's not awesome. I don't like that. I talked to my mentors. I called my boss 2 or 3 times on Saturday and Sunday to talk over cases, to make myself feel a little bit better about what was going on. And that's super, super, super important to be able to have that support. And if I needed him or I needed my other colleague, they would be there for me. That support and that mentorship is so important as a new grad. So if you're looking for a job, it doesn't have to be your final job, your job for your career, but mentorship is going to be very, very, very important because the real world outside of vet school is different than vet school, and vet school can prepare you for a lot of things, but it's not going to prepare you for everything. And that's it. There are good days and there are less good days, and it's not going to be all butterflies and roses. It's just not. Things are going to die. Things are not going to not go well. You're going to feel like you're not good enough, that imposter syndrome, and just being realistic. But one thing my colleague even told me today is that you have to celebrate your wins. You have to celebrate your wins. You're always going to get called out to the worst things, or you're going to get the dogs in and the cats in that are super, super sick. And that's going to be tough. Not going to lie, going to be tough. But there's lots of good things and there's lots of good relationships that you can form with people and make big differences in their lives. And you got to focus on those good things. And one thing that I kind of touched on, I guess, before is that learning never stops. You never stop learning. You should never stop learning. If you're a good veterinarian, you will continue to improve. You will continue to learn as new things come up. And I mean, as a large animal veterinarian now, an equine veterinarian who's doing bovine as well, it's hard to learn everything in school. In my rotations, I focused heavily on bovine, but I did some equine rotations, and the small ruminant rotations, I did a little bit of small ruminant. So it's hard to know everything and be proficient at everything. Even today, my coworker and I, we went to our tech's horse and we're like, let's just try to ultrasound her abdomen. Let's try to find her kidneys and things like that. That's not something I really did in school. That's something that I like to be able to do in colic situations. Let's keep learning. Let's keep growing. Let's keep getting better. The day you stop learning, this day you stop deciding that you want to be better, is the day you stop being a good vet. You never know everything. I think that's important to know, is that even after vet school, people that you're going to be working for, I guess maybe especially on the large animal side of things, they've been milking cows, let's say for 30 years. They've been raising beef calves for 40 years. They've had horses all their life. They know a lot of stuff. You have to be humble and you have to keep learning and you have to keep growing as a person. So those are certain things that I think maybe in vet school, you get focused on, okay, I'm going to just get through vet school and it's going to be okay. And there's going to be a big transition period after vet school as well. as you get more confidence, as you learn more things, as you continue to grow as a vet, and that never stops. One of the best vets that I've shadowed who won the ABP Practitioner of the Year at 70-something years old, he was pretty much on the verge of retirement, and he was still quoting new scientific research about mastitis treatment and mastitis prevention to me when I rode with him in vet school a few years ago. That was really inspirational to me, and I thought, I want to be like him. I don't want to be the old vet that's like, oh, whatever, I've been doing it for 20 years. That's how it's going to be. No, I want to be the vet that is always growing and learning and improving. So those are just a few things that I guess have as insight as a new grad being in practice for a few months. I guess I started my job early to mid-May. So yeah, once again, at the end, after you hear the other vets speak, I'm more than willing to take questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Nicole. And last but certainly not least, we're going to go on to our other recent grad vet, Dr. Melanie Moore.
All right, can you hear me okay before I begin? Perfect. All right, good evening, everyone. I'm so grateful to be here tonight. So I'll give you a little bit of background about myself. I was born and raised in the Cayman Islands, and I went over to Wales in the United Kingdom to complete my undergraduate degree. Then I came over to Canada at OVC to complete my vet degree. So I am a 2021 grad, a Sapphire Snow Leopard. So I've been out for a little over a year now. And it has certainly been challenging, to say the least. I know Dr. Nicole briefly touched on some of the many challenges in practice. So I have some points that I'll go over, and I will touch briefly on some of the challenges that I've faced personally. So right now I am a small animal private practice clinician, and I also am the veterinarian for the Humane Society as well. So I have two roles within the community, which is fantastic because I'm very passionate about community medicine, but at the same time, it is also very exhausting. Dr. Nicole briefly touched on the fact that we are in a veterinarian shortage right now, and it's great in terms of there are lots of jobs out there, but it is also extremely exhausting because our resources are very limited. In the area that I'm in Sarnia, Ontario. We have emergency hospitals closing down. We don't have any 24-hour clinics in Sarnia, and the nearest one is about 2 hours away, which recently had to close its doors. So there is a lot of distress from clients. And unfortunately, I find that anger, that fear of not knowing what's wrong with their pet is most often redirected to myself and the people that I work with, especially other veterinary professionals in this field. So I think one of the biggest things is knowing how to navigate through all of that. I'm a very empathic person, and something that I really pride myself on is how I connect to my clients. It's more than just, okay, this is what's wrong with your animal and this is how we're going to treat. I'm very much into teamwork, team building. Let's get through this together. And I feel like I leave a part of myself with every client because I'm very invested in my cases, and I want them to know that despite the financial inflation in this field right now, I'm not telling you test or telling you to do things that I feel will benefit me financially in the future. I'm only doing what I think is absolutely necessary to, one, figure out what's wrong with your pet, and two, to treat your pet. So I'm going to go into things in a little bit more detail, but one thing I really wanted to touch on is imposter syndrome. Does it ever get better? It doesn't. I mean, I think it's one of those things that you have to be very aware of. So from time I got into vet school, I never questioned if I was worthy until I got there. And then I looked around at my class and I am like, I do not think I deserve to be here. I feel like, we have people in this class that are extremely smart, A-type personality, and I just felt like I was average. So already starting those self-limiting beliefs, knowing that I worked so hard to get there, I feel perpetuated the struggle throughout the last 4 years when I was in vet school. So I was constantly questioning if I was good enough, if I was smart enough. if I would be okay on my own when I became a vet. And I really struggled with those 4 years of vet school. And you will hear people's stories on imposter syndrome, because it's something that unfortunately occurs a lot. But I felt that, okay, maybe after I graduate and I made it this far, I passed my NAVLE, I passed my provincial exam, then I will feel that, I am deserving to be a veterinarian. And I still didn't. To this day, even in clinic, Dr. Nicole said, you will not have all the answers. And that is true. We spend 4 years of our lives learning theory and memorizing drugs and pathways only to get out and relearn everything again, right? I will say the learning really started for me once I got out of vet school, because I felt that all of that theory is certainly beneficial to have that background knowledge, but there are a lot of things that they didn't teach you in vet school. So relearning all of that was very hard. And I often questioned, okay, do I have the knowledge to give the right diagnosis? And there's that fear. What if I misdiagnose a pet? And it got to a point where I needed to put a stop to that, because I think sometimes we forget to reflect on just how far we've come. When I look back to myself first year of vet school to where I am now, I'm a completely different person. And I think a lot of that has had to do with the challenges that I've had to face, but also I think we also forget to reflect on how we've overcome certain challenges. So I really started to remodel the way I think about things, because yes, I will not have all of the answers, and I never will, but I promise I will be a committed vet to try my best to find those answers. And when I became a little bit more comfortable with the fact that, hey, you're not perfect. You will make mistakes, and that's okay. I felt like for me, the imposter syndrome slowly started to fade away. So something that I do with clients now, when I have really complicated cases, I will go in the room with them. I will completely go through my thought process. I would say, okay, this is the blood work. These values are elevated because of X, Y, and Z. These are some of the differentials I'm thinking about. And to be honest, I am not sure which one it is. I don't really know. And I will talk to them and let them know that I don't have the answers, but together we can try our best to figure out what's going on. And I feel like clients really appreciate that transparency, because at the end of the day, we are just humans as well. And I found that kind of having that approach has really helped me a lot in clinical practice. At the practice that I'm at right now, I work with one other full-time veterinarian who is getting ready to retire. So it has been great in terms of exposure. I have seen and done a lot of things. I do a lot of surgery. I do about 30 surgeries a day. So I'm very grateful for those skills. But at the same time, I feel like I've had to put on my big girl pants really fast after just being out of school for a year, because there are a lot of times where I'm at the clinic by myself, and unfortunately, my boss, my mentor, may not be in reach. So when an emergency walks through that door, it is on me to figure out what's going on, treat that animal, and do what I can to save that animal's life. So there is no time for those self-limiting beliefs to creep into my head, because I need to think, okay, Dr. Mort, like, what do we need to do to ensure that this animal is okay? And a lot of the time, I think I just react out of adrenaline. And then when I have time to process things, then I'm like, wow, how did I get through that? But we've always had the skills. We've always had the knowledge. It's just the belief in ourselves that's been lacking. So I feel like the past year for me has been an exceptional year of growth. And I've really been proud of myself for some of the challenges that I've been able to overcome. So saying that, I feel that when you do get into vet school, be mindful that imposter syndrome is a thing. And my biggest piece of advice is nip it in the bud from a very early stage. I know that is a lot easier said than done, especially when there's a lot of comparisons going on with yourself and your peers, but you need to be aware that you've worked extremely hard to get where you are at this point in your life right now, and you are more than deserving to be where you are, and you will graduate through the program and become a veterinarian. And I feel like if I were a little bit stronger mentally at the beginning and I told myself that, my mental well-being would have probably been a little bit better throughout the process of 4 years. So I always tell students, when you start, be aware that it exists and talk to somebody about it, because I had a lot of these feelings. I didn't know how to process them. I wasn't really sure how to verbalize them to others. So I just thought I'd internalize them and just forget about it. So I encourage you to talk about it. I encourage you to reach out to your mentors, to your support, to your family, and to your fellow vet students, because they will also be going through similar feelings about this as well. But just remember that you deserve to be there and you will be a veterinarian. So start off with those strong affirmations. And I'm not saying that every day will be easy, but those challenges will make it worthwhile when you look back down the line and see what you've overcome. So I'm going to kind of talk about the next thing then. Work-life balance. So since I've come out of vet school at such a crazy time, and I've mentioned to you kind of the limitations within the area that I practice, I would say my first 6 months, work-life balance did not exist, mainly because one, there was such a high demand and still is, but two, I was so excited to be out of school and I was so hungry for knowledge that I didn't realize that I was setting myself up for burnout. So one thing I would never recommend that I unfortunately did at a very early point in my career, do not give clients your personal phone number. Do not. As much as you can be as invested in a case as possible, know that when you go home, that is your time for yourself. Because something that I've realized is if I never shut off, if I'm working all day, I go home, I think about work, I do work, then I'm doing my patients an injustice because I'm not being able to show up and be that vet to give them the quality of care that they deserve. You need your rest. You need that kind of mental detachment. So that was something I learned the hard way, because I did have clients calling me at all hours of the night, because as I said, we don't have an emergency clinic here. So it was certainly very stressful, and I reached burnout very fast. And so now I'm slowly coming back from that, and I have been setting very clear boundaries for myself, because after a year, it's hard for me. It was hard for me, I should say, at a point to visualize the next 5, 10, 15 years within this profession, because I felt that after a year I had nothing more to offer because I was so burnt out. So something that I'm being more mindful of going forward is setting those boundaries. So I do not do any work when I come home. My weekends are my weekends. I will make sure to actually do things with my family, take time for myself, completely detach from work as a whole, because I felt that that was what I needed in order for me to reset. Sometimes I feel that it is inevitable where you will have to stay late. You will have to do things that, you're going outside of your way to do. I'm the type of person where I cannot say no. And that was something that was extremely hard for me and still is. And I've learned that you cannot be everything for everybody else and nothing for yourself. Saying no is very important, right? You need to learn to say no. You're not disappointing anybody, but in the end, you're protecting your mental well-being, because you cannot take the weight of the world on your shoulders. So something I'm really starting to practice now is saying no, because the demand for care right now is, at a different level. I've had to say to some clients, I'm so sorry, but our clinic is full capacity. I will have to refer you to the Emerge clinic because I can't take them on. And I feel a lot of the time I felt very guilty for doing that, because previously I would work through my lunches, I would stay late just to take clients on that, I felt needed to be seen, although I knew we didn't have the capacity, I knew we didn't have the staff. So it was solely just me continuing to work. And unfortunately, there are going to be times when you're just going to have to say no. And as I said, that is still something very hard for me, especially from the shelter aspect, because there is a major shelter crisis right now happening in Ontario, where we're seeing a massive surrender of animals that were kind of adopted and purchased during COVID, not socialized, and now owners are going back to work and they want to surrender these animals. And I would say about 95% of the shelters, probably more in Ontario right now, are max capacity. So we are facing a crisis of how are we going to deal with all of these animals? And the current influx that is pretty much linear and steady state. We have a waiting surrender list of over 200 animals and our shelter is full. So I feel like for me, dealing with the private practice aspect of things and dealing with the shelter side of things, there came a point when I was like, okay, if I need to go forward, what do I need to do? So, Dr. Nicole mentioned that, more veterinarians are advocating for, like a 4-day work week. So that was something I made very clear. I said, this is something that I need. I can't be working, 7 days a week, not getting any breaks, or 6 days a week. Like, I need this 4-day work week. I need time to be able to refresh. And I feel that because there is such a shortage of vets, this is a perfect time for self-advocacy. You need to let your future employers or your employers know, hey, this is what I'm struggling in, and this is what I need in order for me to continue to be successful in my role. And I feel like a lot of the time, especially during vet school, we aren't taught to speak up for ourselves and self-advocate. Unfortunately, especially during rotations, that is a lot of people struggle, because we're taught to be quiet, we're taught to observe, we're taught to ask questions if they're relevant. But if you are seen as advocating for something or talking about something that you're struggling with, may that be mentally or physically, sometimes, at least in my experience, I felt that it was often overlooked. So I feel like it kind of sets you up for failure, in the sense where you then go out into the real world and you have no idea how to advocate for yourself appropriately, because you don't want to be looked upon as weak, or you don't want to be looked upon as, complaining all the time. And I think you need to diminish both of those from your mindset, and just know that you need to prioritize yourself firstly, and you need to advocate for yourself. So ensure that you are getting a good work-life balance. Ensure that you're setting the boundary of cutoff times where you're not going to do any work anymore, and ensure that you're taking time to do things that you love. Because I feel like I blinked in the past year and I look back and I'm like, okay, well, what did I really do that I did for me that I really enjoyed? And I can't really tell you, because I was living, breathing, sleeping work. So I feel that sometimes it takes a traumatic event for you to realize that life is too short, but it really is. So start from very early on in your career to make sure that you set those boundaries and set yourself up for success. Okay, so I kind of want to touch a little bit on mentorship. So I feel like the speakers have done a great job at discussing mentors and having their take on mentorship. My take on mentorship is this. A mentor isn't somebody that is just in your life temporarily. This is somebody that you want to see throughout your career. So from vet school, early stage career, and then continues to be there as a moral support, and somebody that is invested in your professional development. I think it is important to have more than one mentor. So for myself, I had a mentor, another vet student mentor that was in a higher phase. And I found that beneficial, because everything that I went through, they went through recently, and they were able to give me a lot of tips, tricks, and just advice to kind of navigate the difficulties that I was facing. The second mentor I had was a veterinarian mentor that kind of helped me with the beginning of my journey, and she has seen me throughout everything. So she's been a really staple part and has played a staple part in my life. And the third mentor that I had, which I don't think people often think about, was a mentor, somebody that I admired that mentally was in the place that I would like to be. So really focused on setting firm boundaries and really focused on ensuring their mental well-being. That doesn't necessarily have to be somebody within the field, but somebody that I admired that really prioritized that. So I had 3 different mentors, and for me, I found it really great to be able to bounce ideas off of everybody. And I think that it allowed me to help navigate through difficult situations a little bit better, because not all the time, people aren't going to be accessible all the time, right? There are going to be times where you may be struggling and you try to reach out to somebody and they're not available. And that's okay. And we need to understand that others need to take time off as well. But I did really appreciate the fact that I had 3 different people in my corner that all focused on kind of similar but different areas, that were also really invested in seeing me succeed and wanting to assist me in any way that they could. So a mentor is more than just somebody that's there to just provide you with like like work experience. Like, they are there to really assist you throughout this journey from start to finish. So I think it's, when you're looking for a mentor, that is something to be very mindful of. I love mentoring. It's something that I'm very passionate about. And one of the things I really pride myself on is, I've only been out for a year, and I've mentored a good few vet students so far. And I think that I'm at the pivotal point in my life where I want you to see me make mistakes, because making mistakes is something that we don't talk about at vet school. And making mistakes throughout vet school, the one time where I truly feel that you should be making the most mistakes is really frowned upon. And coming out in practice, the one thing I really want to show students is that it is okay to make a mistake. We are humans. So I've had vet students they see me drop pedicles. They've seen me lose patients after CPR. Those are the moments I want them to witness, because I want them to understand that every single person will struggle in this career, and it's not just what is highlighted in lectures, right? It's more to it than that. And I think it is so important to have a mentor exposing you to the good, the bad, the ugly, and just allowing one to realize that it is okay to not be perfect all the time. Because at the end of the day, I feel that when I have students shadowing me, I want them to learn from my mistakes. Let's learn together. Okay, so where did I go wrong, or what happened that I could improve on? Let's talk about it, so that when you're out in practice, you never make that mistake again. So that is something that I'm very passionate about, and I feel that transparency in this field, we aren't as transparent as we should be, but that is something that I feel is vital. We need to be more transparent, because I feel that maybe things like imposter syndrome wouldn't be such a big thing if we were just more open and transparent about our struggles, and the mistakes that we make as well. So another point that I want to talk about is how to navigate around financial barriers when seeking veterinary experience. So this is something I see a lot with students, and it is truly heartbreaking, because when you come into this profession, you get into vet school, you should really have that animal experience to, one, help you decide if this is truly what you do. And I know that a lot of the times it is required in the application process as well. However, I think we need to understand that there are a lot of barriers to volunteering. So not everybody's parents are vets, or not everybody knows a vet, right? I find that a lot of students come into this profession and don't really have any prior experience or know anybody. But the biggest issue that I see is not everyone can afford to volunteer. And I know that sounds strange, but think about it again. A lot of undergrad students have part-time jobs, 1, 2, 3 part-time jobs. When you are volunteering to try to gain experience, you are essentially doing that for free. And who can really afford to do that for free, especially when you have so many other commitments and part-time jobs? So therefore, it creates this divide, and it creates an automatic barrier to achieving trying to get veterinary experience. So something that I really try my best to do, and if any students out there are struggling to get veterinary experience because of that main issue of having a financial barrier, please reach out to me, because I personally advocate for students, and I will personally reach out to clinics, because thankfully I do have a lot of great connections. And I think it's really important for clinics to understand that a lot of students cannot afford to volunteer. So thankfully, a lot of the clinics that I've been working with have been understanding that and been able to provide somewhat of a stipend for certain students. And I understand that's not going to be the case all the time, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of students that are seeking veterinary experience. And unfortunately, a lot of clinics aren't willing to necessarily rehire someone on. So I think this is something that the veterinary profession needs to continually talk about, and I don't necessarily have the solutions for it. But one thing I do have, and I do offer to any of you here today, is if you are seeking veterinary experience and you're finding that you're coming up against a financial barrier, please reach out to me, and I can certainly disseminate information to the right people that can further assist you with that. Because I don't ever want anyone to feel that they cannot do something, or they may not be good enough to come into this field because they cannot financially afford it. So just keep that in mind, and just know that there are options, and you have people out there that are willing to advocate for you. So I think I've pretty much touched on all of the major points that I wanted to discuss tonight, and I welcome any further questions.
That was great. Thank you so much, Dr. Melanie. So before we jump into the Q&A period, I just want to give a huge thank you to all of our guest speakers tonight. We very much appreciate you taking a lot of time out of your very busy schedules to be here and share with us your experiences and your knowledge. So just a huge thank you for that. And with that, I will stop the recording and then we can jump into the Q&A period. So if you have any questions and you're comfortable unmuting your mic, feel free to do so. Otherwise, you can put any questions you have in the chat.